Hi everyone, in this Skills for Work Microsoft Excel video we're going to learn about an extremely useful tool in Microsoft Excel called the fill handle tool. It's a very useful tool that's used to quickly and easily add data to multiple rows and columns. And that's if your Excel data follows a pattern. So we're going to see some similarities between something that we've already known how to do, which is to copy and paste information from one cell to another. The problem with that is that we get the exact same information. Now that's not a problem, of course, if that's what you wanted. But if your data is following a pattern, like a series of numbers or days of the week or months or dates, and we want it to increment, we can't exactly copy one day to another column because we're going to end up with the same 2 days. So the fill handle is a very useful tool, and what it will do is it will allow us to, anywhere where there's a pattern of data, and you'll see what I mean by pattern in a couple of seconds, we can very quickly add data that follows that pattern to multiple cells, rows or columns. So let's look at a practical example in the next section. Okay, let's look at a practical example of using the fill handle tool. I've got a new book open, book 1, as you can see up here, and I've got a new sheet open, sheet 1, and I'm going to give you an example, a practical example of how we might use the fill handle tool to fill in a pattern of data. What do I mean by a pattern of data? In the introduction we spoke about patterns of data, data that follows a particular pattern. And what kind of patterns? Well, let's have a look at the following. If I type in the day Monday into cell A1, let's imagine that I'm designing a schedule or a roster of work for an organization. You might reasonably expect me to type in Tuesday into cell A2 and Wednesday, and so on it goes down along. Now I can speed this process up by only typing in Monday, but not typing in the rest of the days of the week. I can use the fill handle tool to get Excel to fill in the rest of the days of the week. The reason I can do it with Monday through to Friday or Monday through to Sunday or whatever number of days I want is because this is an identifiable and known pattern. It's an established pattern in English, the days of the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and so on. So let's see how it works. Let's see how we can actually do it. You may have noticed in the past when you have a cell selected, your current active cell, we know there's a green border around it to identify it as the current active cell, but at the very far bottom right hand corner there is a square, and that's the fill handle tool. That's our shortcut for the fill handle tool. We can hover our mouse over that. My mouse is now changed to a black cross here. You may not see that in the video, but you will see it on your own computer. And I'm going to hold down my left mouse button. I'm keeping it held down. And I'm going to imagine that I want Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and so on down this way, down along instead of across. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep my mouse button held down and I'm dragging my mouse over the cells. Now the great thing about Excel and the fill handle tool is that as you drag your mouse over each cell, a little box pops up. You can see it here, little tooltip. Well, it's not a tooltip, it's just a flag, because this is not a tool itself. But it's a flag telling us exactly what is going to be placed in this cell when we release the mouse button. So Tuesday is going to be placed in here, in cell A2, Wednesday is going to be in cell A3, Thursday in cell A4, and then Friday in cell A5. Now nothing is going to happen until I release the mouse button, because I've still got the mouse button held down. I release the mouse, and that's it. That is the fill handle tool. Let's delete Tuesday to Friday, and let's do it, except this time let's do it across the way, because it doesn't make a difference. You can do it down in a column or you can do it across in a row. As long as you've got the first item in your pattern of data typed in, Excel is going to be able to replicate the remainder, the gaps, if you like, in the rest of the pattern. So I hover my mouse over the fill handle tool, and this time I'm left clicking, holding my mouse button down, dragging to the right across the row until I get to cell E1. And again with the same, there's a little flag that pops up that tells you what is going to be placed in each cell. Release the mouse, and there we go. Now we can use our double left click trick to widen our column, because Wednesday couldn't quite be seen. And that is a fill handle tool, and it's very, very, very useful. So if we can do it for Monday through to Friday, what else can we do it for? Well, let's try months. If I'm typing in something that's going to take place each month of the year, it would take a while to go February, March, April, May, and so on. No need. All we need to do is click on the fill handle tool, hold our mouse button down, and drag it down until we get to December. And in fact, if you drag it again, it will wrap back around to January. Now we're just going to do January to December. We're going to do 1 year. So 1 to 12, obviously there are 12 months in the year. And there it is. That's the fill handle tool. So we can work with established patterns. Now the great thing again about Excel and the fill handle tool, I've just deleted everything here, is that we don't need to work with full words for, again, established patterns. For instance, I can go mon, click on my fill handle tool, drag it down, and it will just give the 3-letter abbreviations for the days of the week. And it will do the same if I type in Jan, left click on Jan, hold my mouse button down, drag it down all the way to December. And it gives the 3-letter abbreviations for the months. So it depends on how you type in your initial value. I'm going to delete all of these again. Type in Monday. This time I'll go down as far as Wednesday. And then I might go away and do something else. And then I might come back and I might think, hang on, I want to continue on, but I don't want to type in Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Maybe I only thought that I was going to be scheduled for 3 days here. And now I go away and do something else, and I come back and I want to finish this off. You can do that because Excel is going to look at the last thing that you typed, which is Wednesday, and it's going to say, yep, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday comes after Wednesday. So don't worry if you leave your mouse button go too early. You can always go back to the fill handle tool on the last cell, which has a value in it in that pattern. Again, this is a pattern. And we can click and drag down as far or as shallow, if you like, as we want. We could just go on to the next day if we wanted to. So that's the fill handle tool working with identified and identifiable patterns. 2 of those patterns being days of the week and months of the year. And we saw that we can use 3-letter abbreviations for the days of the week. We can use full names for months. Again, I'm just clicking on the fill handle tool and dragging down. We can use 3-letter abbreviations for the months or the full months as well. So in the next section, what other patterns are there? In the next section, we're going to look at numbers. This is working with text, but Excel primarily deals with numbers. So in the next section, we're going to look at numbers, and we're going to continue on with different kinds of numbers like dates as well and so on, because dates can be very useful to know how to fill them in using the fill handle tool. So we'll start looking at numbers in the next section and how we can use the fill handle tool to fill in numbers. Let's look at how to use the autofill tool now to work with numbers. We've seen how easy it is to work with patterns such as days of the week and months of the year, and also the abbreviated forms of those. But what about numbers? Because numbers is what we're going to be working with predominantly more than text. So zooming in here in a new blank workbook, and I'm going to type in the number 1 here, and I'm going to type in the number 2 in cell A2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and so on. It would be nice if there were a way of quickly filling a sequence of cells. Let's imagine I wanted to do 25. That's a bit of typing, 7, 8, 9, 10 and so on. There's a bit of typing involved, and I can't use copy and paste because obviously each number is different, so it wouldn't make sense to copy 1 down along here because you're just going to get a string of 1s. So I'm going to delete these and we'll see if the autofill tool comes to the rescue. I'm going to type in 1, then I'm going to left click on cell A1 and I'm going to click on the fill handle tool, which is in the bottom right hand corner of the cell. I'm going to hold my mouse button down and I'm going to drag it down as far as cell A25 because I want to do 1 to 25. Now the eagle-eyed among you may have spotted something that's going to happen. I just get 25 ones, which is not what I wanted. In order to force the autofill tool to increment, because what autofill will do is it will fill, if it's a number, it's going to just fill each cell. It's kind of like copying and pasting. It's going to fill each cell that you pull down across, either by rows or by columns, with that number. So the trick is, what we do is we hold down Control first of all. Keep the Control key held down on your keyboard. Then hover your mouse over and you'll see there's a little plus sign beside the autofill tool. with the autofill tool, crosshair looks like a plus sign itself. You're probably not seeing it on my screen because of the screen capturing software, but you will see it on your own screen. So when you hold down the control key, that symbolizes that the autofill will now increment as you go down. So I'm going to left click again, drag down as far as cell A25, and this time I will get 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on down to 25. So that's very, very useful. So remember, if you just want a sequence of ones all the way down along, or any number, just click and drag normally. But if you want to increment by 1 each time, hold down Control and then click and drag. And the nice thing about this is that we don't need to start at 1. I'm going to delete these. Actually, no, I'll leave them in the A column and I'll go over to the C column and I'll type in 100. Again, if I left click on cell C1 and drag down, I just get sequence of hundreds. But what if I want to increment it by 1 each time? Well, again, hold down Control, click on the autofill tool, drag it down, release the mouse, and you'll see that it increments by 1 each time. Using the number that you're starting at as its base number, it will simply increment by 1 each time. So autofill is great for incrementing by 1 each time, but what if we wanted to increment by something other than 1? What if we wanted to go up 10 at a time, or 20 at a time, or 100 at a time? I'm going to type in cell E1, I'm going to type in the number 10, and what I want to do is I want to increment by 10 each time, so that I'll have 10, 20, 30, 40, and so on, all the way down along. I know that if I just click and drag, I'll get a whole bunch of 10s, which is not what I want. And I know that if I hold down Control first of all, and then click and drag on the autofill tool, I'll get 11, 12, 13, 40, which is again not what I want. I want 10, 20, 30, 40. I want to go up by steps of 10 or increments of 10 each time. The trick is to do the following. Type in the number 10 and then type in the number 20. And the difference between these two cells, which is 10, is the amount that we want to increase by each time. So the trick is left click and drag and select your first 2 cells, which is the only 2 cells that obviously have anything in them at the moment. Then hover your mouse over the bottom cell, or over the bottom of the range of cells that you've selected, of the 2 cells. Then hold down your autofill tool. Don't hold down Control, just hold down the mouse button on this autofill tool and then click and drag, or sorry, then drag, because you're already clicking. And what will happen then is you'll increment by 10 each time. I'm going to do that again. I've typed in the number 10 and I've typed in the number 20. First of all, I'm selecting those 2 cells. I am not holding down Control. I am just hovering my mouse over the autofill tool at the bottom of my selection. So at the bottom of the autofill tool, at the bottom of the selection, just underneath the bottom cell, I'm holding my mouse button down and I'm clicking and dragging. Sorry, I'm just dragging down. I'm not clicking. I'm keeping the mouse button held down and I'm dragging down. And that gives me 10, 20, 30, 40. So what Excel does is, just undoing that, it uses the difference between the 2 cells that you've selected, which is 10, as the interval for every other value that it's going to put in. That's why we get 10, 20, 30. You could do that for any difference at all. I could go in, I could do, let's do our 3 times table. Let's do 3 and then let's do 6. And I could select both of these, hold my mouse button down at the bottom and go all the way up to 36, which is 3 times 12. So you can do it for absolutely any interval that you want to. The trick is to type in the first 2 values in your range, in your pattern, and then hold down hold down the left mouse button on the autofill tool at the bottom. Keep the mouse button held down and drag your mouse down to populate the other cells, and Excel will use the difference between the first 2 as the step or the interval for all the other values that you drag your mouse over. Very useful. So what about dates? Numbers and text are easy enough, but what about dates? Well, dates are simply numbers as well, although they are a specific format in Excel. And Excel is smart enough to know what to do with dates when you type them in and drag down. I'm just going to select everything here and delete it. I'm going to go back to cell A1 and I'm going to type in today's date, which is the 14th of the 5th, 2020. So that's my date format here, and you can see that Excel has automatically formatted it as a date cell. If I hover my mouse over the autofill tool, hold my mouse button down and drag down, it will increment the date by 1 day each time. No need to hold down control. All you have to do is drag down, left click and drag down. Now what if I wanted to go up by more than a day? What if I wanted to go up a week at a time, which you might want to do if you're organizing a schedule where something happens once a week? Well, it's very easy to do. All you do, and it's a very identical process to incrementing the numbers by a certain amount. You simply type in the first day, then you go forward a week. So a week after the 14th of the 5th will be the 21st of the 5th. And then what we do is we select the two values. And again, Excel is going to use the difference between these two dates as the step or the interval for all the other dates. So hold my mouse button down, and drag down as far as I need, and you'll see that we go up by a week at a time. And that will work as well if you have it in long date format. If you remember, long date format in Excel will do the same thing. So extremely useful as well. And again, you can go up in any sequence of steps or any pattern that you like. If I go from the 14th, let's say, to the 17th of the 5th, 2020, that's 3 days. So something happens every 3 days. Again, left click, drag, select the two cells which have the two different dates. Hold your mouse button down on the fill tool at the bottom of the selection. Don't hold down control. Click and drag down, and we'll see that we go up by 3 days at a time. I know it can be confusing at the start. You're thinking, when do I know? It's something you'll get used to. It's something you'll get used to. And don't forget, when you hold down control, you will see the little plus sign, which means that if I were to do that on a pattern which doesn't need it, what it will do is it will simply repeat it. Whereas if I have numbers, sorry, I shouldn't have typed in the actual numbers. If I have a number like this, if I hold down the left mouse button, I don't see a plus sign. There's no, which means it's not going to increment it. Now if I hold down control, I do see a plus sign, which means it is going to increment it. So that's all there is to that. In the last section now, we're just going to look at how you can use the fill tool to actually, even though you mightn't think it, increment other types of values, even when there are other things in the cell that you think might interfere with the incrementation. So finally, in this section of the video covering autofill, we're going to look at how to increment other kinds of values. And what do I mean by other kinds of values? Well, think of the following. If I have product 1 typed in cell A1, and I wanted product 2, product 3, product 4, product 5, and so on. I could copy and paste, and then I could go back and change the 1 and the 2 and the 3. You know, it's long-winded. It's long-winded. Fortunately, autofill comes to the rescue. And what it will do is, you can't implement the word product. It doesn't make sense. You can only implement numbers. And Excel knows this, but what it will do is it will look to see if there's something in the cell which it can implement, and if it's in if the number is at the beginning or the end, what it will do is it will implement that number then by 1. So I've typed in product 1, and it will simply copy the other one. So I've typed in product 1. I'm holding my mouse over the autofill tool. I'm dragging down, and you can see by the little flag that pops up, it's going to do product 2. It simply, it's a bit like dates in that sense. You don't need to hold down control, which is confusing, I know, because we did in order to just implement 1, 2, 3, 4. For instance, if I have 1 typed in here and I left click and drag down, I discovered that I did need to hold down control. But when it's something like this, if the number is part of text, what Excel will do is it will simply implement the number, and it will just copy the word product. It will copy the word product. Let's try it with, even though this would be kind of weird way of typing it in, but you might see it. And it does the same thing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you can actually you can implement sometimes cells and values in cells, even though you're looking at them and you're thinking, well, that's a sequence or a combination of text and numbers. It's probably not going to work. Let's type in series 1, and it very often does. So if I want series 1, series 2, series 3, and so on, this time I'll go across the way just to prove that you can actually increment across by columns and not just down by rows. So I'm holding my mouse button down and I'm dragging my mouse across to the F column, and there you go, series 1, series 2. Let's try day 1. If you're not numbering, or rather if you're numbering the days but you're not actually labeling the days, because maybe you don't know in a schedule what day it's going to, day 1 is going to be a different day each time. It's going to be, you know, Monday or Tuesday each time. Hold the mouse button down, drag across, there we go. You do the same down here, there we go. Let's try month 1. And when I click and drag down now, it's just going to replace whatever is in this selection or this range of cells. So that works nicely too. So depending on the format of the data and how you're typing in your text and your numbers, very often you can't use the autofill tool as well. Finally, if I just type in a word like hello, now obviously I can't increment hello, it doesn't make sense. If I just click and drag down, I just get a whole bunch of hellos. And sometimes you might want that. You might actually want that. For instance, you might be typing in January and you might need to type it in quite a few times. I'm just typing in Jan for short. Aha. Now I did this intentionally to show you that if you want to override your incrementing, what you need to do in that case is you need to hold down Control, do the opposite, and then click and drag down. And what that will do is it will not increment it. Similarly, if I was typing in a day, like the 14th of the 5th, 2020, and I wanted several of these because maybe I had several people's names and maybe roster schedule duties and so on, if I click and drag down, Excel is incrementing it by 1 each time, but I don't want it to. So this time I hold down Control, click and drag down, and now it will just give me a whole bunch of 14th of the 5ths. It's something you'll get used to. I mean, it's very easy to undo anyway. If it does the opposite of what you thought, then it means simply you either do need to hold down Control, you don't need to hold down Control, depending on whether or not you held down Control. So that's all there is to the autofill tool. Extremely useful, very, very useful for filling cells in either columns or rows with patterns of data.